Hello, welcome to a quick video that's going to explain why I have these two engines, what they are for, why they've been here, and what we plan to do with them in the future.
Okay, so I have two engines here, and I've had them for, like I said, I think somewhere around 2 years. These are Nissan VG engines. They're like the Motor Series that came in the 300ZXs and such, but these are from a Nissan pickup truck and a Nissan Xterra. This right here is a VG30E, meaning it's a 3-liter. This is a VG33E, meaning it is a 3.3 liter. Now, this engine right here came out of my buddy's 1995 Nissan D21 hardbody. This engine has around 80,000 miles, but it had an oil leak that started, and at some point the oil leak got out of hand and it ran out of oil and unfortunately blew to complete smithereens. So this engine is completely wasted. This is what I call a new engine. This is from a 2002 Xterra, and it's set up a little bit differently, and its top end is controlled a little bit differently than the VG30E. However, between the two, I will be able to mix, match, and convert the VG33 to work in the Nissan hardbody. The intake manifold, valve covers, distributor, all that kind of stuff is all a little bit different, so that's what I got to change over. But the block setup itself is pretty much identical. There's some other small changes that happened. This is a V-belt engine. This is a more modern serpentine belt engine. I don't know if you can see that there, but serpentine belts, it's still a multi-belt, but certainly better than the V-belts. So we have that on hand. I think a couple of the locations are a little bit different on this engine. The air conditioning compressor, and I think the water pump is slightly different. The distributor is set up differently. This, you can see it has a traditional exterior coil there, and this one does not. So that is another part of the conversion. The valve covers have these bracket add-ons on the VG33 to hold a lot more electronics than the VG30. So the reason I have this is that we are saving his truck. It's still an 80,000 mile truck and in great condition, and it is his dream truck, as should it should be for some of you as well. The Nissan hardbodies, they're just extremely durable, very reliable trucks, so long as you keep them full of oil. So this year, I'm hoping will be the year that we actually get to build this engine, put it together. We're gonna replace some parts, mix match, like I said, and really clean it up and make it look good, paint all the parts, and get it ready to be a really strong, reliable engine setup for that truck. And maybe I believe get about 20 or so more horsepower out of this engine versus the VG30. So a slight upgrade in a few departments, some for maintenance, a little bit of power, like I said, but it's also not terribly complicated because it is the same block. We have the exhaust manifolds are completely different, so that has to be changed. And I think the most difficult part of this conversion is going to be the oil pan. You can see the shape and peculiar design of the oil pan on the Xterra engine. It does have a remote oil filter, unlike the original VG30 over here, which had it in the stock location, which you can see that plate right there, this plate right here with these 4 bolts, that's where the oil filter goes on the VG30 engine. And it may not look like much right now, but this location on the VG30 is actually extremely difficult to get to, believe it or not. So the remote oil filter and plopping it right up front up here is actually something that I would like to keep, but we do have to change oil pumps because the oil pumps are in different locations. It's not as simple as just throwing a D21 pan on. I still will need to get a D21 pan because, as you can imagine, the damage of this one exploding completely destroyed this pan. And honestly, it's the worst oil pan damage I've ever seen. So I'll give you a quick look at the carnage. I kept the pan just because it's something else. This should just be a flat plane, and it is completely crunched in right there. We have our largest hole right here, which I can pretty much stick my finger through. So this is smashed in. There's a hole right there where there's a spot weld, I think. I think there's another one hidden there, but there's not actually a hole there. You can see the big bulge sticking out right here, where the bottom of a connecting rod just slammed into it, and it cracked it right there. And there's more holes down on this side. There's a split right here. I mean, it just ate this pan up. And if we look at it on the inside, let's take a look on the inside. This should just be a complete tray. I mean, you can see what it's supposed to look like in your head probably, versus what we have here. I mean, just holes. This thing is completely torn in half right there, and you can still see all the metal shavings in here. This pan was completely full of just metal parts all over. It's pretty gruesome. You can see even the scarring. You don't want to run out of oil. Oh, there's this hole too that I can put my finger through. I forgot about that one. But yeah, you definitely want to keep your motor full of oil to avoid this. So yeah, it's a pretty epic oil pan, so I saved it for that reason. If we look underneath the engine, I don't know how much we'll be able to see with the lighting and all that, but you can see how most of the bearing caps are just missing, and that's because they all broke. A lot of these ends of the connecting rods here, they're just gone. They're caps because they all fell into pieces. I think some of the counterweighting got broke on the crank. And this engine was still stuck. We got it to move after beating on the torque converter with the sledgehammer because we couldn't access this torque converter bolt because the engine wouldn't turn. So we were trying to rip it off from the flywheel, and we actually got it to turn, smacking it enough times with a sledgehammer. But yeah, that is the story of this VG30, and I still have it just because we have not done this mix and match yet. Once we get all the parts that are needed to be harvested off of this VG30 and put onto the VG33, then this engine can be scrapped. So, except for the oil pan, keeping that. But anyways, that's going to be the quick rundown on these two engines that have been sitting here for quite some time, and I'm sure it's going to get asked at some point with them being in the background of basically every single video, but I do hope that there's actually going to be real videos on the build of these engines, well, engine, sometime this year, because I hope to build this VG33 alongside my freshly acquired North Star for my own project car. So hopefully we'll see that in the future. Until next time.